We know that the morning routine can be one of the most stressful times of the day. And it's always so stressful to start your day with a stressful, sequence of events, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Chill Like a Mother podcast. I am here with Jenny and Conrad, two of the three authors of Complex Kids Simple Solutions. And as you can see, I've got some markings in here already. Hopefully, we can touch on a few things that I flagged in this book. Generally speaking, we're going to be talking about the morning routine, whether that's a school preparation, a workday preparation, getting everybody out the door, whether that's daycare or what have you, and how we can maybe look at this from a skills perspective instead of a behavioral perspective. So for anybody who struggles with the morning routine, with either keeping their kids on task, keeping themselves on task, we may be able to provide you with a little bit of a structure on maybe some things that will help, maybe some things that won't, but just to know that you're not alone in that morning routine struggle. So Jenny and Conrad, feel free to introduce yourselves.
So I'm Dr. Jenny Demark. I'm a psychologist in Ottawa, and I'm in private practice. And my practice, sometimes I work with kids who have things like ADHD or autism spectrum disorder. But most of the time, kids and families are coming to see me because there's some kind of developmental learning or behavioral concern. So I provide assessment, diagnosis, intervention, consultation.
My name's Conrad Leung. I am a behavior analyst. I'm also in Ottawa in private practice, and I work with people across the whole age range. I work primarily with children and youth, and my area of interest is working with kids that are presenting with severe problem behaviors. So sometimes they might have a diagnosis attached to them as well too. But really, I look at, what are some of the areas of challenges that they have and how can I support families and the child themselves in building some of those skills.
Amazing.
Yeah. So starting talking about the morning routine. So this is something, Conrad and I are both parents. We have lots of friends who are parents. We work with lots of parents. We know that the morning routine can be one of the most stressful times of the day. And it's always so stressful to start your day with a stressful, sequence of events,
Mm.
right? Recently, I was working with a family of a school age child, I think about 8, who was just having chronic, like regular daily meltdowns during the morning routine, which ultimately led to often being late for school and parents sometimes being late for work and just starting the day off on a really kind of negative tone. And through kind of assessment and conversation, it wasn't an issue of the child not enjoying school or trying to avoid the school. What we really kind of figured out was that the child just didn't know how to get themselves organized in the morning, and the stress from the mom and dad, and which is real, like there's real time pressure there.
Been there.
Yeah. Yeah. We all have.
Uh,
We all have. So it was just causing this poor kiddo to melt down. So in our book, Complex Kids Simple Solutions, we talk about 3 pillars, 3 main areas to intervene when it comes to addressing any kind of parenting challenge. And we really do feel like these 3 pillars, prepare, teach, and motivate, we feel strongly that they can be applied to almost any parenting challenge or problematic situation that can arise. And by prepare, we mean to be proactive and to be, making sure that we are planning for things ahead of time. So when it comes to teaching the morning routine, one of the first things is I recommend is that parents give themselves a bit more time, right? You're under that time pressure. So get up 10 or 15 minutes early just to give yourself more of that time. The other thing is to have some realistic expectations about what your kids can manage in the morning, right? Like, so trying to avoid, signing of consent forms and, finishing homework and I don't know, going to basketball practice, like things like this in the morning can be really difficult. So that's some of the prepare things. And there's lots more that can fall under the prepare, but I'm just talking about in particular with this example. These are things that I worked on with this family. Teach. So again, being able to manage the morning routine is a skill, right? It's a skill like any other skill. And so helping to teach kids to be able to do that means you have to kind of lay it out for them and kind of go through what the expectations are. what we tend to recommend is if you know you have to be out the door by 8 o'clock, which is the example for this family, they had to be out the door by 8 in order to get everyone to school and work on time. So really what we did is we worked backwards, about all the different steps that needed to be done. So if you need to be out by 8, it means you need to be, especially in the wintertime, that you need to be getting your clothes, your coat and boots and things organized by 10 to 8. You need to be packing your school bag by 7:45. You need to have your teeth brushed by a certain time and so on, so that you leave with good, generous time frames for these activities. And so we created like a checklist for this particular child of the things. And in this case, the parents decided like they weren't going to expect him to pack his own backpack. It was just too much at this point. Eventually, that'll be added into the schedule, but we want to break it down into the bare minimum of what's expected in the morning, which really in this case meant, he needs to get up, he needs to have his breakfast, get dressed, brush his teeth, and get out the door.
Which is a lot more than just a couple things, right? For a lot of families, that's really difficult in that time crunch in the morning.
Like
Yes.
for even I just had this conversation with my own almost 7-year-old where I was like, you have 4 things. Like we got 4 things. If we allot 10 minutes for each of those 4 things, we're given some pretty generous time. And so my reverse engineer is also at the door by 8. We don't have to be leaving by 8, but we have to be at the door by 8. And then it really made sense for him to be able to compartmentalize. He gets to choose in which order he gets to do those things in. Like we almost always start with breakfast, but then teeth brushing and getting dressed can flip flop a little bit depending what brother's doing and, all those things. But it's just like this thing only takes about 10 to 15 minutes if we really can zoom in on it. And that was really helpful for him to understand because for him it was like, no, I have an hour to do 4 things. I'm like, you don't have an hour to do 4 things. Like you
Right.
have 4 things that take 10 minutes and 10 minutes of play on either end
Yeah.
each.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're using a lot of really good prepare strategies, right? You've got that extra time that you've allotted. You're
Yeah.
setting those realistic expectations, and then maybe later on we're gonna add some more things. But also you're providing that choice in there too, so
Yeah.
that he can choose.
The
Like,
choice is good.
yeah, some days it might be brushing your teeth before breakfast, and some days it might be the other way around. Your dentist
Mhm.
might not agree with that, but for the purpose of right now, let's just start with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's call that a win. That the
yeah,
Yeah.
toothbrush got in the mouth.
Yeah.
That's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I also like how you're including him in the discussion and the plan, like, because that's something we believe in too, is like as much as possible, kids need to be, they're part of the deal, right? You're making a contract with them. So in the case of the 8-year-old I was speaking about, like, yeah, he helped make that schedule and helped write it out and decorate it.
Yeah.
It was stuck up on the fridge and they were able to kind of go through and check it off every morning. And then the third pillar that we talk about is motivate, which in our case really refers to positive reinforcement, right? Like just catching the good behavior, noticing when kids do as well as they can. And in this case, every day that this kid was out the door by 8 o'clock, this is a family that would drive to school. He got to pick the music that they listened to in the radio on the way to
Fun.
school. So it wasn't like some big, he wasn't getting, lots of money. It wasn't an expensive thing. They were in the car anyway, but he was really motivated by having that control over picking out the music. And the parents, I think they got kind of sick of listening to some of the music that he would pick, but it was motivating for him and it encouraged him to keep up the good work. And on the days when they were running late and they didn't get out the door, he didn't get his music. It's not like a terrible big punishment. It's just like kind of that was part of the deal. And it helped to motivate him to get back on track for the next day.
and I imagine there wasn't any shaming involved either, eh? Like you didn't make it in time, and
No, it's just kind of a matter of fact, oh, it's 5 after 8,
yeah,
mom gets to pick the music
yeah,
today, and move on.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I like that you got him involved in terms of making the different charts and then selecting the steps and all that, right? Like making sure that he feels heard and also
Yeah.
empowering him to be involved with it
Yeah.
and having some
He was
say.
actually he was also really motivated to, like, he didn't wanna be having these meltdowns every day. He didn't wanna be starting his
Yeah.
day like that. So I think he liked that it was kind of a family project,
Mm.
right? This is not something that this kid has to work on his own. This is a family project to make the morning less stressful, smoother. Everyone gets to start their day in a happy way. That's
Yeah.
a recent example of the prepare, teach, and motivate in action.
Yeah. What would you say are the parents' skills in that process? What do they need in their toolbox in order to go into it, like Conrad said, with that non shamey, blamey, judgy language? Because I think for women, and I can speak for at least the clients that I work with and some of the social constructs of being a good mom, is that we get stuck in the either I'm patient or I'm a complete asshole. And so it's like how to navigate a scenario like that without maybe going to that default pattern of, oh man, I just sounded like my own mom. And I know that wasn't good. And I know that I don't want to talk like that. And I know it's going to have an impact on my kid. And yet I can't stop it.
I I think the first step really is they took some time to figure out what were the challenges in the morning first, right? So they try to figure out, is it a I really don't want to go to school issue, or is it, are there some peer interactions that are happening at school that maybe are a little bit more challenging, or is it that the morning is just rushed? Do I need some help with brushing my teeth, or is it a little bit harder? The food selection in the morning isn't, up to the child standard. Because I think what you want to do is be a skills detective. You really want to think about what are those skills that we need to teach. And we put some questions for families in the book to really think about, like, what are some questions that you want to be asking and considering yourself to help frame specifically those are the skills or that I want to teach, or this is where I want to spend my energy. And in this case, for the situation that Jenny's mentioning, is it sounds like it makes sense to build in some of those skills for the morning. And so now we're going to make sure we have those preparation strategies. We've got that extra time that Kayla, you have mentioned, that you also put in there. You want to make sure you're incorporating your child in there as well, so that they have some say, they feel empowered as well. And, put in lots of that choice, whether it is the order that things go in, or if it's the food items or the clothes that I'm wearing. What are some of those things that we can do? And we are also modeling these things for our own children as well too. When I'm getting ready in the morning, I'm not just sitting there in front of the TV and, not doing anything, right? I'm going out there and I'm brushing my teeth. I'm getting dressed. I'm also having breakfast potentially with the children or not. So those are some of those things that we also want to model and be mindful that we're modeling for our children. It's not just doom scrolling first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really think parents who come in and ask for help with some of these things, I see them as actually being very brave to come forward and say, this is something, that's not going well, and to your point, like, I sound like my mother. The morning, this is not like the Brady Bunch morning that I had envisioned for my family. What we do, I think, is we really try to understand where parents are coming from, and we really try to help them not be embarrassed or feel ashamed of being in this situation, right? Like, sometimes kids come into the world with a temperament that we were not expecting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so being able to come and ask for help, and we're not expecting parents to be perfect. Like, we don't see parents as being like either completely perfectly patient or complete assholes, to use your term. To use, yes. Like, I think part of our job is to help parents navigate that they're not perfect. Not every morning is going to go perfect. We often like to have parents collect some data on how the mornings go, right? So that we can see, like, right now, if, for example, this 8-year-old was having meltdowns like almost 100% of the mornings, we're not expecting to get to zero meltdowns. Like, that's an unrealistic expectation. But if we can get to only like meltdowns only 10% of the days, like, that is a huge success. Helping parents kind of have that realistic expectations for themselves is also part of what we try to do.
Yeah. We're looking for progress and to help families make that progress and steps in the right direction.
Mhm.
Because not every day is going to go swimmingly, right? And for whatever reason, some days might go very, very well. They might have, got a really good night's rest, and I might be in a better mood. And, for whatever reason, they're looking forward to something that's happening at school, right? So again, there's going to be days where there are challenges, but what we want to say is, are things generally moving in the right direction? And if so, fantastic. And if we make mistakes, that's also okay. I mean, like I said, like Jenny was saying, we're both parents, right? I definitely make a lot of mistakes as a parent, but it's learning for myself and it's also modeling for my children that I make mistakes as well, and that's okay. And how do we bounce back from some of those mistakes, or how do we adjust and learn from them?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Something from the book that I wanted to highlight, and you've named it already, is the key elements of reinforcement. I feel like positive reinforcement, kind of like the word boundaries, has somehow maybe lost some meaning for adults, especially.
Yes.
It's like, how do I do that? What do I do that? What sounds authentic? What sounds fake? And in me referencing some of my opinion pieces on gentle parenting, I think it has given parents a skewed view of what real-time communication actually looks like with another human being who may be not tolerating distress very well, or not understanding the skill, or not understanding the time crunch. And so tell me if you can remember them. If not, I've got them right here. The key elements of reinforcement, and how do you see those play out in real time in real life?
We want to make sure that they're things that are reasonable and also attainable, right? We're not making these giant promises of we're going to Disneyland. We want to make sure that they're things that we can do. We want to make sure that we can get them to our children in a timely fashion, right? Sometimes it's great that I can pick the music now on the car ride to school, and that's soon after, it's tied soon after to me getting ready in the morning. But if I wait till a week later, like, really, that's not really gonna change anything, right? So how
Or
soon
even after
afterwards
school.
happens, or yeah, or after school.
Like, if immediacy is important. Yeah.
There's that. There's also, if it's something that the child can freely have, it probably won't be as so-called valuable, right? If I get to pick the music anytime, or if I have my own phone that I can just go onto Spotify and select all the tunes, right? It's not going to be something as valuable. But maybe there's something about, like, the music sounds really good on this system. Plus, on there's a CD, or maybe I'm dating myself, but there's this
I
other
still have
power.
CDs. It's okay.
Same. There's these tunes that I really, really like that I get to hear in this car that I don't otherwise get to access, right? Not to make things seem transactional, but it just makes it, that much more valuable for them as well too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you about positive reinforcement. It's overused. People don't really understand what it means.
Mhm.
I think what people sometimes interpret it as praise for every little thing that the child
Yes.
correctly, which I don't, that's not really what it is. My interpretation of positive reinforcement is that your child does something, they get something afterwards that then increases the likelihood that they're going to do that thing again. So in the case of the child getting out the door, when they get out the door, they are reinforced by getting to choose the music in the car on the way there. That's the positive reinforcement that increases the likelihood that they're going to get out the door again the next time. So, like, the thing about positive reinforcement, like, parents and teachers often have ideas about what positive reinforcement is. They're like, "Oh, but I give them stickers after every, like, great lesson," or we always stop at Tim Hortons after hockey practice. But it really is tied to the future behavior, right? If you're not seeing increases in that future behavior, then what you're doing is not reinforcing for the child. And I don't know that we say this in the book. I think there's this tendency to just be praising every little thing that, "Oh, I love the way you put your shoes on. I love the way that you smiled at me." And sometimes, like, when a child is getting, like, so much praise, they stop listening to it,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, praise can be highly, highly motivating. And I'm not saying we want to deprive our children of praise, but I think we want to find a balance where, when we are praising them, the child really hears it and knows that we mean it. Sometimes we know that by over praising or over reinforcing a behavior that's already learned, like, if your child already knows how to put their shoes on,
Yeah.
Mhm.
we don't have to keep reinforcing that. It's internally motivating because they're independent and they can put on their shoes, right? Is
Mhm.
there a term for that, Conrad? A behavioral term? I'm putting you
Okay.
on the spot.
No, I
Okay.
can't think, but it's absolutely right, right? One of the people one of the things that people don't like about so-called reinforcement is, well, my kids should just do it. They should do it
Yeah.
because I told them to do it, or they should do it because I want to do it. Well, if they could, they'd be doing it already, right? And so what we want to do is use reinforcement as a tool to get them to a place where they're doing it a little bit more often, and or you are using words very calmly when mom's, in the middle of a meeting and you're just gently asking for something, right? So at first, we're going to use a little bit more reinforcement. And then over time, like Jenny's alluding to, right, we're going to gradually fade and do a little bit less of that. But still, once in a while, they're still going to get a little bit of that reinforcement, right? If I'm still being asked in the middle of a meeting to, can I go get a cup of juice? Like, I'm still going to go help you get a cup of juice, right? Once in a while. But the thing with reinforcement is it is so individual and specific to that person and in that moment. So if you think about yourself, if you think about your most favorite, most delicious meal that you like, if you can get that all the time, it's probably not gonna be as tasty, right? Or what you think is really delicious might be disgusting to me. No,
Hmm.
no offense or anything, right?
No,
And
for sure.
so it really is specific to that child, and sometimes I might be feeling for that meal, or I might be craving that meal a little bit more, and sometimes I'm just like, "You know what? I don't really wanna listen to Taylor Swift right now. I've been listening to her on repeat. I'd rather
Perfect.
listen to some heavy metal or something,"
Hmm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a great point and leads into what I think is so necessary as part of the framework. And I don't know if you guys would have put this in this spot in this way, but the prepare almost sounds like attunement, or how I would talk to my clients about attunement. So like attuning to your child in this moment and yourself to understand what that moment might need. And so sometimes I'm going to want cookies and cream ice cream, and other times I'm going to go to my favorite, which is chocolate peanut butter. But if I'm not feeling chocolate peanut butter, or I've had lots of peanut butter and you give me chocolate peanut butter, I'm going to make a face. Right. It's not personal that you gave me the chocolate peanut butter. That's not about you. You thought that you were attuning to me in that moment. It just happened to be not exactly what I might need. And I think that's so important when it comes to parenting, because our temperaments may change or fluctuate or shift, especially over the years of parenting. Attuning to a baby is so much different than attuning to a toddler, a school age, a teenager. And we see that with physical touch being less and less in gendered studies around boys and girls, is that we naturally change the way that we physically engage with each other as children age. And so to be in attunement to positive reinforcement, or what skills they might be struggling with, or how to prepare or teach or motivate them in different phases of life, is going to fluctuate and shift and change. It's like, for example, my 7-year-old really struggles with brushing his teeth and putting on his shoes. He knows how, right? He's done it before. He's done it independently, he's done it with help. It depends if we're at grandparents, if we're at home, who else might be visiting. And so it's that, like, in this moment, am I attuning to the, do you need me to maybe push you a little bit to do it independently? Or do you need me to support you in this moment? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
where is that connection piece between parent and child?
And what I'm so glad you mentioned that,
Yeah.
and that's such a great point and a pickup that can also be used for those prepare, the teach, and the motivate.
Yeah.
When I work with families, one of the things that I often will mention to them is just you're constantly taking your child's temperature, you're constantly gauging them and seeing, how much support do I need in this moment? Or, you know what, if it's going to be a gong show right now to have you brush your teeth, maybe let's just do it a little bit later.
Yeah.
We're going to pick that battle and we'll choose it later at a time where you're going to be a little bit more amenable to some of the supports that I can provide. And we just take a little bit of that heat out. So we're still practicing brushing your teeth and still working on getting you to do it a little bit more independent without me being on you. Really taking the temperature, engaging them, and then adjusting accordingly.
This is about the time in the conversation that I like to throw my husband under the bus. Let's do it. But an example of this that I always think about is, we were having a birthday party when my son was turning 6. And so we've got, like 6 or 7 5 and 6-year-olds running around the house. They're all wound up on cake and
Mm.
ice cream, and we've been having a dance party, and it's been so fun. And then, the kids are leaving, their parents are coming up to pick them out home, and my husband said, "Okay, let's get this cleaned up." And I was like, my 6-year-old, like, you could, like, he just melted. He couldn't do it in that situation, right? And then my husband's, he was frustrated because, he knows how to clean up the playroom, and he should always, he should just be able to do it. But it's about taking the temperature, right? Like, this was not the time to pick that particular battle. So he's a good dad.
Of course, you feel safe sharing that story would indicate to me that he's a
Yes.
good dad and you have communication. Yes.
Yes.
And when we talk about consistency, we talk about consistency of approaches. We're not talking about like consistency means every single time I'm going to ask you to clean up and you got to clean up your room and it's got to be done exactly in this way, right? The nice thing that we like about the prepare, teach, motivate framework is really it's about giving parents the tools to be a little bit more consistent in terms of their approach and how to think about some of these common challenges across a variety of areas and how do you adapt that framework to meet your family's needs in that moment.
Hmm. I love that. I love that you made that distinction between consistency in order or the way that you do it.
I do think parents are afraid that if they give their kids some slack in certain situations, like in the cleaning up after the birthday party, it's like, no, when the playroom's messy, we always have to clean it up, like, by the end of the day. And I think parents worry that if they, like, forego that they're going to be inconsistent. But that's not really the case, right? We do want parents to be consistent. Like, if you ask your child to do something, we do really want you to try to follow through on that and try to make sure that it happens. We do want kids to listen to us. But I think in case of the birthday party example, cleaning up, just don't ask them to clean up, and then you avoid the whole issue, right? Or like in your toothbrushing example, you change the level of support and your expectations based on whether you're at grandma's house or whether, it's late at night coming home. That's the consistency. It's not like you have to do
Yeah.
the same thing in every situation every single time.
So it's not like we're, showing kids that we're weak
Yes.
or
Giving in.
giving in, right? It's really, if anything, it's quite the opposite. It's to model to them that we can be flexible, just like they can be flexible as well too. And it shows them that we're going to be warm, we're going to be compassionate with you, and there is a little bit more room, right? And I realize it's been a little bit of a harder day, so maybe we don't have to do the homework today,
Yeah.
or we do less of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I could ask another follow-up question and then we will just talk forever and I won't be able to stop. So, if anybody is interested in learning more about this is the book. This is what you want to look for. And I will include the link in the show notes. Do either of you have other places where people can find you? And if you want to speak to Linda's.
So Dr. Linda Reinstein, is not here today, but we all work together in private practice. So, and our practice is called Child Solutions. So you can readily find us at
Childsolutions.ca. Yeah.
And we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram under the Child Solutions. The book is available, like Indigo, Amazon, independent bookstores. We encourage people to order from their friendly neighborhood independent bookstore when they can. Anything else?
Yeah, check out our Facebook and the Instagram. We share little tidbits and different information and tips for families. And the book really does take a much deeper dive into the prepare, teach, and motivate framework. And then afterwards, we go into its applications across common everyday scenarios. But through social media, we're able to share some brief information around some of those things as well too that might help families along the way.
Yeah.
Mhm. Amazing. Thank you so much for being a guest here today. And everything linked in the show notes. And we'll see you in another episode.
Thank
Thanks,
you.